He arrived just before sunset, exhausted, blistered, and clutching a leather-bound book so tightly it looked fused to his palms. Daniel was not a wanderer by nature. He was a man of precision, of study, of theory. At 32, he had read more than most would in a lifetime. Ancient texts, modern psychology, quantum philosophy. He could quote Lao Tzu and Jung in the same breath. And yet, beneath the brilliance was a quiet, aching emptiness, because despite all his knowledge, he couldn't answer one question that gnawed at him relentlessly. Why do I still feel lost? The book he carried wasn't just filled with words, it was filled with his words. Years of notes, reflections, journal entries, underlined passages, diagrams of the self, lists of patterns, fears, dreams, and metaphysical theories. It was, in a way, his second brain, his self-constructed map to make sense of a world that had started to feel unbearably loud. He had heard of a Zen master who lived at the edge of Mount Tsukio in Japan, far away from temples, tourists, or textbooks. A master known not for what he said, but for what he didn't. Master Kaito hadn't written a single book, and yet people left his presence in silence, often with tears they couldn't explain. That intrigued Daniel. He had met teachers who dazzled with words, but perhaps what he needed was someone who didn't try to explain at all. When Daniel arrived at the mountain's edge, after hours of hiking through pine and fog, he found a simple wooden structure, half temple, half cabin. In front of it sat an old man cross-legged by a fire, his eyes closed, his breath barely visible in the cool dusk air. Daniel bowed, unsure of etiquette, but trying to show respect. "Master Kaito," he said softly, "I've come from very far. I've studied the teachings of Buddha, Christ, Krishnamurti, Socrates, and 100 others. I've practiced mindfulness, cognitive therapy, non-duality. I've tried to understand the mind, the soul, time, purpose." His voice cracked. "And I'm still tired, still anxious, still scared." Kaito opened his eyes slowly, like he was waking from centuries of thoughtlessness, and simply looked at Daniel. Not through him, not past him, at him. Daniel, without knowing why, offered the book in his hands. "This is my life's work, everything I've gathered to try and make sense of life. Please, can you help me understand what I'm missing?" Kaito took the book gently, turned it over once, then without a word tossed it into the fire. For a heartbeat, Daniel froze. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then his body reacted faster than his mind. He lunged forward, reaching for the pages as flames curled their edges into black. But Kaito's hand stopped him mid-motion. No anger, no resistance, just stillness. "Why?" Daniel whispered, his voice trembling. "That was my everything." Kaito looked into the fire. "Exactly," he said. "You brought me your burden, not your being." Daniel sat back, stunned. Kaito continued, "You are drowning in answers, but starving for truth. And truth does not live in conclusions. It breathes in presence. You think this book is you, but it is only your noise, dressed in logic." Daniel felt a strange mix of rage and relief flood his chest. "But if I don't seek answers, what do I do?" he asked. Kaito gestured toward a nearby garden rake. "Rake the leaves, sweep the path." Daniel stared blankly. "That's it?" The master nodded. "Yes, but do it without trying to achieve anything." And so Daniel began. He stayed for days, raking, cleaning, washing bowls, feeding birds. At first, he did it resentfully, then curiously, and slowly something strange began to happen. His thoughts, once swirling like a hurricane, began to settle like dust on old wooden shelves. He noticed the sounds, the crunch of gravel, the whisper of wind, the silence between birdsong. He ate slower, breathed deeper, laughed for no reason. He stopped trying to fix himself. He simply showed up, day after day. One morning, as he sipped tea beside the master, he said, "It's strange. I feel like I'm finally not searching." Kaito smiled. "That's because you've arrived." Daniel nodded. "But I didn't find any answers." "Exactly," said the master. "You found space, and that's where truth lives." It wasn't enlightenment with trumpets or cosmic fireworks. It was quiet, ordinary, but it felt like freedom. A few days later, Daniel prepared to leave. As he bowed one last time, he said, "I thought I was here to find something, but I think I was here to lose something." "You lost the need to know," said Kaito, "and gained the joy of being." Daniel smiled. "I'll never forget you." "Good," the master said, "but more importantly, don't forget yourself." Daniel walked down the mountain lighter than he had ever felt, not because the world had changed, but because he had. He had stopped trying to figure it all out. He had stopped seeing his mind as a problem to be solved. Years later, Daniel became a quiet presence in his own world, not a guru, not a teacher, just someone who lived fully, who listened deeply, who sometimes burned his old notes to feel the warmth of stillness. And if this story touched a quiet part of you, subscribe to this channel, because maybe it's time to stop chasing more and start living in what already is.